Hi guys, it's Dr. Bernstein, and a lot of people were asking about how to develop their analysis within their body paragraphs. So, the first thing I should tell you is it's totally normal to be having these issues, especially at this level of the sort of education ladder, because what's happening is you're really starting to develop your thinking and your writing. And in that process, you have to sort of push past what feels normal and natural to you. So, for most of the students that I've had over the years, in earlier stages of the writing process, they really were emphasizing more what other people have said and sort of presenting other people's ideas. But now you're being asked to advance your own argument, your own interpretations. So you still need to set up what other people have said, but you need to add that next level of analysis. And that's why one of the reasons why I'm so gung ho about topic sentences that state the main point of your paragraph and relate back to your thesis, because that helps add an argumentative boost to your paper. The other place where you really need to include analysis is towards the end of your body paragraph. So here's a sample paragraph from someone's essay. Wagner's use of steps or phases to organize the information brings the feel of a manual to the poem. So, okay, that's a nice topic sentence because we know the writer is going to be focusing on the phases of approaching poetry, and it relates back to the thesis of what makes it a manual. The military formats all their publications so that members of all education levels can understand them and know what to do. So this person in his opening paragraph had talked about how, military manuals. And so this is a nice way of coming back to an issue that he raised earlier, but this time in relation to a specific point. So he's setting up the context here. Now he moves into the transition. He uses that nice phrase, like nice transitional word, likewise. Likewise, the structure of Wagner's poem is broken down into four steps that all readers can easily follow. So that's a nice transitional sentence that's getting us into Wagner's poem. As mentioned earlier, so that's a nice phrase to have because you don't want to overuse it in your paper, but sometimes it can help remind the reader that you addressed this earlier. As mentioned earlier, in stanzas 1 through 3, Wagner takes poetry out of the negative light and into the reader's hands by clearing up myths and presumptions about this genre. So that's just reminding us that he's covered this information. In stanzas 4 and 5, she shows the benefits of reading poetry. The poem is equated, that should probably be equated with dirt, humus, rich and heavy from the garden. Later it will become the fat tomatoes. So you don't, one thing you need to notice is that you do not need to use the ellipsis marks at the beginning or end of a quote, only if you're leaving out words in the middle of a quote. The third step in stanzas 6 and 7 gives the actual directions for starting out with poetry and how to gauge your process. Um, so what I would do here to develop this point, since this person is talking about the steps, I would actually give a specific example in here of what this step is. Then he moves into the final step. Wagner finishes off the poem in the last stanza with words of encouragement, which is essential for the ongoing reading of poetry. The structure really opens the door to ensure that the intended audience overcomes the myth. I'm assuming the myth of poetry being difficult and sort of above our heads, and becomes a reader of poetry. So there's some good ideas here, but what the writer would really need to do to develop his analysis is, after setting up all of these steps, is explain what makes this such an effective manual. How does this manual as a whole, how do all of these steps open up the door to ensure that readers sort of overcome all the stereotypes of poetry being difficult and can actually become readers of poetry. So that's where you need to develop your analysis. It's like, how does her poem open up this door? It's not fluff, but you need to, because that's one fear that people have, is like they're just going to add additional fluffy information to make it longer. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you need to prove this point by developing your thoughts. So you could say, well, and one strategy that's really effective is to think about what it would be like if the poet didn't use this approach. So you could say, by if Wagner hadn't broken down the process of approaching poetry into these four easy steps, we might still be feeling bewildered by, complex metaphors and other literary devices. But instead, what she does is prevent us from feeling overwhelmed by walking us step by step through the process of appreciating poetry. Are these actual sentences that I would put in there? No, I'm just thinking through it out loud, a paragraph that I just pulled up. But that's where you can start developing your analysis. And it does take a little time, and you have to give yourself a little time to experiment with it, and you're going to feel uncomfortable, and you might have some awkward parts of your paragraphs. But if you never give yourself the chance to develop your analysis, you know what? You're never going to develop it. So try it. And that's it for now.